have a green light, Andy?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Everybody welcome. Thank you for your introduction. My introduction is, my name is Rick van der Wel. I'm 50 years. I always worked in sales. One of my first jobs was beer, selling beer to bars and cafes. And I worked for the world's biggest local brewer, InBev. Okay, and it was in the time that we only served lager beers in Holland. It was like 25 years ago. And we introduced the white beer, the Duvel and the Pollens and the ales, and it was a very exciting time to sell those beers throughout the whole of Holland. After a couple of years working in breweries, I went to an insurance company, also in sales. And for the last 6 years, I put on my own business, and that's the Subsidie Informatiegroep. And that came. The reason for that was I worked for 2 years with a company who also provided grants for companies, but I wasn't convinced about the way they did it, and I thought that can better, and so I started my own company in the middle of the crisis. That goes very well, and one of the main things with grants is that companies need attention and support in trying to get grants, because applying for grants, getting them and do the administration, it's serious business and it's serious money. We talk about 6 billion euros only in Holland on grants which will be giveaway, not for nothing, but to companies. And 2.5 billion euros is given to the small and medium-sized enterprises. So not the Philips or the SAPs or the DSMs or the Axos from this world, because they have the other $3.5 billion euros. But for the small and medium-sized enterprises, it's 2.5 billion euros. And that's not really logical, because the small and medium-sized enterprises are making a turnover in Holland for 70% of labor, of labor potential. So it's not really in balance, but ASML and DSM are of course also very important companies for Holland.
And they have a very powerful lobby.
Yeah, like Volkswagen. They have it also. And you see what's happening. Okay, that's. I'm going to tell you more about grants. I will not tell you everything because that's not possible. And what I want to do is I want to make the presentation interactive, and that means that if you have a question like you have, just ask them. Raise your hand, yeah, and I'm going to answer your question. Because at the end of the presentation, most of the questions could be lost through all the information. So if you have a question, no problem. Please don't hesitate, but ask them. Well, what are grants? There are some people here who already have experienced grants or applying for them. In that way, grants in Holland are not a gift. The Dutch government decides that when you get a grant, you must invest in something. I will tell you later. But in the end, grants is simply money. Money you can use in your company to accelerate in some areas you want to do. And that can be innovation, that can be expanding to other countries. Never mind, it's money, you decide what you do. And the big trick is you try to get a grant and you use that, or you don't try and then you don't get it. But you have to make an investment. So it's not that you say, I have a good idea, please give me money. In Holland, it doesn't work like that. You need to invest in people, that's money, or in other ways, in materials, and that kind of things. So I'll explain it later. You know, that's very important that you have to do it. I see a hand.
Investment into patent would be considered investment?
No. No, but to the product in the patent could be possibly interesting, because what kind of patent is it?
Utility.
Utility. Okay, that's not a development.
It's American terms, I'm not sure if in Europe.
No, okay, well, we have to talk later on then, what exactly is, yeah? Okay. So grants is money. Why are they giving grants to companies in Holland? We have the European Union. We pay, as country, as all the members of the European Union, we pay tax to Brussels. And Brussels has obligated us to give 2% of our brutto national product, of our total income of the country, to give that back to the companies in the form of grants. So that's in Holland, we have a turnover of 600 billion euros every year. So 3%, or 2% is 1.2 billion. Is no, it's like 3 billion what we should give back. And no, I'm sorry, no, it's 18, 3% of 600. We give 6 billion, as I told you. Yeah, so it's like 1%. Yeah, okay, that's another discussion. But the European Union, yeah, obligates us to give that money back. And Holland does that in a way through grants. And they do that because we want to stimulate innovation, very important. We want to stimulate durability, environment, very important, CO2, Kyoto Protocol, etc. And in the end, it all comes down that if you stimulate those areas, you create jobs. And then we are there where we want to be. If you give money to create jobs, you get money back through income tax. So the circle is then, well, but it's a stimulation. So that's very important, but it's obligated to throughout Brussels. Yeah.
You said that Holland decide to use it like in grants,
Yeah.
but do other countries do it in another way than grants?
Yeah, they can decide for themselves how they give it away.
For instance, what could it be?
Well, there can be a lower tax rate for all the companies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, instead of 25 as we have in Holland, they can say we give 20 or 15. So it's for every individual country to decide how they give that amount of money. Yeah. Good question. Clear enough? Yeah. No questions? For whom are the grants? Well, that's quite simple. Everybody with a business who pay an income tax through employees, or as an owner of a company, or you pay corporation tax. And that's called in Holland vennootschapsbelasting. Yeah, probably heard of it. So you don't get money from Holland, but you have to pay lesser tax as a result of the grant. Is that clear? Yeah, so you don't get it, but you don't have to pay, you can pay lesser tax because you have applied and have been granted a grant. So everybody also here, an entrepreneur, if you have a business for your own, or you are working in a BV, in a bigger corporation, no problem, there's always a possibility to get a grant. How do you receive grants? One of the most used means is by a lesser income tax for yourself when you pay profit tax. And that's depending on which kind of company you have. If you have a company for yourself, or you're working in a big company which has a BV construction, it's always about tax. So I will tell you at the end what the revenues are, to not give too much figures. The second way is the reduction of paying corporation tax, and it has to do with vennootschapsbelasting. Every company in Holland pays vennootschapsbelasting, and that's a tax over profit. And the amount of profit can be lowered if you get a grant for instance, investing in solar panels. So you have to pay lesser tax, and that's an advantage. And there is a possibility of getting cash. I told you 5 minutes ago that wasn't possible, but it is possible. But it's not likely that the way you are now working in the business can get a very serious amount of money. It can be a couple of hundred or a couple thousand of 2,000, 3,000 euros. It is not very serious money like we do for the bigger companies, which can get like 50,000 or 150,000 cash. But then you also have to invest a lot of money. So it's always a part of the investment that you can get back in cash. Yeah, well, in the end, it's the money is divided by Brussels, and Brussels has a KP7 plan, and in that plan, Brussels agrees about the segments of the market which are most interesting to give grants in, and that can be water, that's ICT, computer technology, that can be nanotechnology, that is logistics. So there are seven areas where there is more money than usual.
That's a separate.
Well, in the end, it's the same amount of money, and that's divided. But if you are in that kind of segment of the market, there are more possibilities, and those are the EU grants. And besides that, for every market sector, there's always a possibility of grants. But for those 7 specific areas, there's more money. Which is all coming out of the 6 billion euros per year, which we can do. Under what conditions you can get a grant? As I told you, you have to invest and or develop. And if you develop, it's also a way of invest in a product or company. And it's always money, because if you develop, you need people to do that, and those people get an income, and that's the kind of investment, of course. Yeah? So it's always about investments. 2 categories which I want to mention here, because I think those are the most interesting one for you people here. Durability and environment, and that's everything that has to do with lowering the CO2 emissions, which are agreed upon the Kyoto Protocol. Yeah, so that's the electric car, it's like solar panels, it's like windmills, it's whatever everything that you get an average of 10% refund through a grant over the total investment. I have a client, and that's Arriva. It's a big transporter for people, buses and trains. And they won a claim in Brabant, the province, and they had to invest to win the claim. They must invest in durability, and they invested €500,000 in LED lighting. So they invest 500,000. They get a claim. That's a claim of a couple of billion euros, and they get back in grants 50,000 euros over the 500,000. And they have, of course, lower cost with electricity bills, etc., etc. But it was one of the demands when they wrote in the claim, when they applied for the claim. My English is not that good. Development R&D, and people, as I explained, there's an evolution. We're not monkeys. We are not working on the land anymore. There's a lot of people working in ICT. We do more clever things here in Holland, and to stimulate that, Dutch government give especially a lot of money to development and innovation. And ICT is one of the biggest areas where the grants are going to. Because ICT is like a telephone, it's a smartwatch, it's a tablet, it's bigger, smaller. So there are a lot of development activities around the ICT sector. Any questions? Okay. In Holland we have like 2,000 kind of grants. So you know why I have a reason to exist. No entrepreneur can all know those grants. So we help them. 2 of the main important grants for the companies at SME level are innovation, and that's called the WBSO. And the WBSO is, in the Dutch language, is Wetbevordering, Speur en Ontwikkeling. And to translate it to English, it's a law by seeking and development.
Research and development.
Research, yeah, okay, research and development. So everything which has to do with development, and then with technical risk in it, so not development of a new book or of a method, but echt technical development, is potential interesting for a grant. If you get the WDSO, there's a second grant, and that's the RDA, and that's all the costs and expenses you have to make to get the development on the way, you also get a grant for. And that's like 10% of that investment. And there is a third one, and that's the innovation box, and that's very interesting. If you have developed a product and you're going to bring that product to the market, the sales revenue of that product, if that's being made with the use of the WDSO, you can lower the tax over the whole revenue of that product from 25 to 5%. So if I have developed this and I sell here 1 million euros of revenues, I have to pay 250,000 euros of tax, and now I have to pay 5,000 euros, 50,000 euros of tax. So you have more liquidity in the company to do other things. Developing it through, or buying a new bigger car, or a new building, or more staff, whatever you do. So innovation box is very interesting. Durability environment is a grant who always will be used in lowering the tax of the company. It's not income tax, but the profit tax. So what you hear is, if you want to use a grant, you have to have somebody which you pay an income, an investment, or you have to buy something like solar panels, like windmills, like LED lighting. So you have to invest, and a part of that investment goes back. So you don't get anything, you don't get money for free. That's what I understand. The government department in Holland who take care of all these grants is called RVO, Rijksdienst voor Ondernemend Nederland. There's a website, rvo.nl. You can read everything about any grant they have in Holland. Probably you will be bored in like 5 minutes, 20 seconds, because it's huge, it's boring, it's it's not interesting. Yeah? The only thing you want to see is how much money you will get. Well, that's not standing on the website.
Yeah, I guess from my sense that like the grants or the tax credits in the Netherlands are more sector specific rather than like location specific. Because for example in the US it's very location heavy. Like if you found a company or bring jobs to a specific community area,
Yeah.
you can write off your taxes. But it seems to me it's more innovation, or is it kind of a combination?
No, we have a standard tax rule, and that's that if you make a profit till 200,000 euros, you have to pay 20% tax, and above that you pay 25%. And of course, there are a lot of means to lower your tax, your profit, which are standing in the books. So if I have a profit of 300,000, I can lower it with 100,000 because I buy a Tesla. Yeah, that's a problem. So but there is a general tax law, 20%, 25%. And not for the Starbucks in the world, or the AVGs or other companies who get the head office here and they pay lesser tax, but that's something we don't know how much. That's a different arrangement with the tax department.
Just to clarify, we don't have any extra grants that are like if you do something in Amsterdam, you will not get a grant from the Amsterdam City Council.
No. Well, if that's the question.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, okay. Well, there are some regions. There are regions in Holland, but if you want to apply for that kind of grant, it must be something very specific. It's not something general. The WDSO, RDA, the EDA is a general rule which every company in Holland can apply for. And if you are located in Amsterdam, there can be a specific grant which you can apply for here, but not in Den Bosch or in Groningen. But in Groningen there's another specific grant, but that's very complicated, and that's depending on what kind of business you are. More questions?
Well, the second organization, the second government.
Oh, it's the same logo.
I
So yeah, Every 2 years that department is being reshaped. They have to kick out some people, they have to make some budget costs, and so it's, I work now 6 years and it's the 4th time they changed the name.
It's good to be in branding for them.
Yeah.
Returning client, huh?
There are some bureaus who make a lot of money, but yeah, okay. So another thing, what's important with grants which are related to development and innovation and research and development is that it must be a technical development, but not a method, or it must be a book you're writing where you want to put in some ideas. No, it's a technical R&D part. And you can do that as a company on your own risk, so you can develop your own product which you want to market in Holland and through licenses or whatever get an income, and you develop that on your own risk. Or you are a programmer and a developer, and you get an order from a company to develop something where you're being paid for, and then give that back. If that work you're doing for that company is technical difficult, within ICT before, then you can also apply for a grant. Although it's not your product, although you don't invest anything, and you keep being paid, the company is paying you, they take the risk, but because you are the developer, you are programming in code with the binaries and the zeros and the ones, you are the party who can get that grant. So that's strange, but that's the law.
So that you get paid twofold.
Yeah. So you get like, I said other things. You get like 100 euros per hour for that work, and then you also get the rent. That's nice. Yeah.
I'm a little bit confused about this. Like, if I need a programmer to do the work for me,
Yeah.
can he be paid by grant or
He-
is
He cannot be paid by the grant, you have to pay him. But if it's technical, difficult what he is making, then he can apply for a grant. You not, because you are not programming. The other party is programming, and he can apply for a grant and can get it.
and if he does programming for his own company, he can,
If he's
if he's doing programming for his own company, then he can
he can also,
he can apply.
Depends on who's
that's on his own risk. That's on his own risk.
So
Because
if I have a programmer as a staff, like
Yeah.
member of the team, then we can apply.
yeah.
Okay.
You can also apply when you hire that person and you pay him by the hour. You can make an arrangement with him and say what you are going to do is a grant worthy. You can apply for a grant, so you have to pay part of the grant back to me. So you can also benefit of the grant, because the grant is a stimulation for you and for the programmer to do it.
I think I will talk
We
about
talk,
this.
okay.
This is interesting topic, but we will talk
Yeah.
about this.
Yeah, well, there are a couple of, as what you told, you probably don't program yourself. So you hire staff, or you hire somebody, no staff, but you hire an entrepreneur, then you have to pay him by the hour of the project. That entrepreneur can apply for a grant. So if he gets like 5,000 euros, you can say to him, I want like 2,000 or 2,500 euros back from you. Yeah, because you get that grant because I gave you the order. And you wouldn't be programming that if I wouldn't give you the order. Yeah, so,
And the programming language, it doesn't matter which one.
no.
Any programming language.
Now, it must be technical difficult. Yeah, it must be not easy. It's not copy paste. There must be a
All
technical.
programming.
Well, not everything, not everything. Yeah.
Is this only for Dutch people, or just if people come here like Kennis werkers?
Yeah,
They
good
come
question.
from abroad and they are already
Yeah.
intelligent, difficult.
Yeah. Very good question. Very good question.
Can they also apply
Yeah.
for such a grant?
If, as I explained, the way you get a grant is by lowering income tax, so that income tax must be paid in Holland, and then you can apply for the grant and can get it. If you are not being paid by a Dutch company who pays Dutch taxes, there's no possibility to get that grant.
So is that person having a company over here?
Yeah.
That
And
person-
you are working in that company and getting paid, then that company will pay a amount of tax over your work. And then you can apply for a grant for your work and perhaps for other colleagues. Yeah.
So I'm just curious, in my particular case, is BRSP qualified as technical?
It's not easy.
No, I'm sorry.
It
It's
requires lots of
yeah.
R&D.
yeah, it's quite a lot, but it's not technical difficult.
Okay.
So if you want to experiment with a new flavor mix, ingredient mix, to get a what kind of beer, whatever, the making of the beer is not. You cannot apply for a grant, but the installation, for instance, if you have an idea how you can make your brew installation more efficient by working with new technologies, that could be interesting.
Sorry, no. Hey,
Welcome. Thank you. Okay. More questions?
Yeah, so this would, the case you described would only be about the tax reduction or also about cash?
Well, cash is I will give you an example. I have a client, and the client is an engineer, and he makes cups for McDonald's and Burger King. There's a huge problem with materials, with waste, with distribution, and whatever. He invented a cup. This is the cup. And in this cup, you can pour cold and hot drinks. It's impossible, there's no cup. But he invented it by doing this. And in that way, you get, this is a two-dimensional cup, and then you get a three-dimensional cup with plastics in it. And you can pour hot and cold water. That idea he has made in his head, and he get a grant for developing this idea through and go in production. And he got 50,000 euros. He has to invest 120,000 euros in this idea, and he gets 35% back in grants, 50,000 cash. Cash, and the 50,000 is being deposited on his bank account.
And that investment, does that have to be cash as well, his investment, or would that also be his labor?
We written a project plan,
Yeah.
and in the plan is his working hours
Yeah.
to a rate of 60 euros
Uh-huh.
per hour, but also making prototyping, etc., testing. So in the end, he has like in the project 20,000 euros project costs.
Yeah.
Of that amount of money, he got 50,000 euros on his bank account because the grant was applied. So that's a way to get cash, but always you have to do an investment. You don't get the cash if you don't have the project plan, and you have to fulfill that plan. You have like a year or 18 months to do that, and you have to administrate what you're doing, and you have to show what you have done. That doesn't mean that that idea must be successful, because it can fail, yeah, that's always a possibility, but then he can, he gets the money. It hasn't to be successful, but he must show what he has done by stacking all the prototypes, so he can show it, etc., etc. Yeah? He has to explain what he has done.
Okay.
So that's a way you can get cash. There's no income tax return, no corporation tax return, cash money. But in the end, you have to invest, always.
Actually, two questions. One question, this is when you talk about 120, it doesn't mean you have to invest so much. It would be much lower amount, right? Or it is minimum.
Grants are something that you always have to apply before you do the real development. So you have to make your project planning, and you have to inschatten,
Estimate.
You have to estimate the costs of suppliers, you have to estimate your own working hours, and then you make a total and you say it's like 120,000.
But she asked if you can go for a grant with smaller projects. What is the minimum size of a project?
That can be also 50, and then you get 50 times 35%, you get 17,000 euros.
Okay, so it could be smaller, it's
Yeah.
just the grant is 30%.
Yeah.
And grant is possible to receive before you actually, you show estimation, for example, I have investor,
This,
then it could be I get grant before we really spend.
yeah, this specific grant, that's called an MIT. That specific grant, okay, you know. Oh, okay. You get that, we did an application for the grant at September 1st, and 15 October, he got the amount of money on his bank account. Yeah. But you are obligated to do something.
Yeah.
Not that you say, well, thank you very much, and I'm going to PT. No. First, sorry.
I'm curious, how did I decide on the amount of grant to give you? The example you gave us, housing, that's the 120k
Yeah.
result, and then we got 50k back.
Yeah,
So how did I decide on the amount that you give you?
you decided what you do.
Okay.
That's our role in this part. We advise how you can make the maximum amount of money with the grant. In this case, there is a maximum you can apply for, and the maximum was in this case you net 50,000 times 3, so the next amount of project cost was 140,000, and then you can get the maximum amount of grants of 50. Yeah. So what we do, we write down the project plan together with our clients, and one of the nice things of these grants is that you can give up your own working hours in that project, and that's of course 100, 200, 300, 400, and you can apply them for 60 euro per hour. So if you say I work like 6 months, 100 hours per month, 600 hours times 60, 36,000 euros on labor, and that's like 35% therefrom is the net. So there is a flexibility in how you make your project.
But then you can just rate yourself higher to get to.
Now the amount is 60 euros per hour, but you can sell it's like 800 hours instead of 600. Yeah. Yeah. And in the end, in this case, my client, he makes his own administration, and he is responsible for what he's writing down. So if he puts down 600 hours or 800 hours, no problem. Yeah, in reasonable, with a balance of what he's doing.
But overall, it's in proportion to how much you, the grant, the amount of grant you get is
Yeah.
in proportion to how much you invest.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Just to clarify the time period you have to show what you're doing, and it varies between receiving cash or receiving.
Well, yeah, that's the grants like the VBSO, that's the grants for the development, for the people, for the work, the tax compensation. It's like if you apply on the 1st of December, then you can you get the money in like 2 months later. So then you can have the revenue of the tax, of the grants. In the other way, the LDA and of the AEA arrangement is like in the end of the year when you pay your corporation tax. Yeah, so that's another moment. And this specific tax was that it was within 2 months deposit on your bank account. So it's different from the rule from the rent you have and you get when you get the money, yeah, or the advantage of the. Is that other questions? Yeah.
Just to make a calculation, so for instance, if you need to have like this project 420,000 euros, and so you have like your labor cost of all your hours are 30,000, so that makes you still need 90,000
Yeah.
To invest, and so and you get like 50,000 from the state. Does that mean you only need
say what are your real expenses, like the suppliers, making prototypes, that's a determined amount of money, and then they say, well, it's 25,000, okay? We can apply for 140 to get the maximum amount of grants. So then we have 25, 140, it's 150,000. What can we put in that 150,000 on expenses, yeah, to get the maximum grant? Well, the most flexible possibility are the hours somebody is investing in that project. So if you have like 150, is it then reasonable to say 150 divided to 60 is like 1,600 hours? Yeah? Is that realistic? Well, in some ways it can, but in this case we apply for 800 hours, yeah? And the cost was also high. So it's like being flexible with the numbers, but be realistic. Yeah? Because if you apply, it must be a realistic story, a project plan, and not a fairy tale. Because then the people who give the grants away say, well, it's a fairy tale, so it's not not Yes? Okay. So again, if you do it on your own risk, and you want to make a product which you want to sell or want to be licensed as a SaaS product or whatever to get your revenue in, you can apply for a grant in R&D and innovation, but also if you've been hired by somebody to do that development. So that's an important difference to know that in both cases you can apply for a grant. Good. Some examples of development. Well, software, obvious. I just take a picture from the internet, but Skype. There was a time that these kind of products were in a development stage, and the development, when there are technical problems in that development, then you can apply for a grant. Quite simple. I have the telephone, of course, the mobile phones, the smartphones, have given a boost in ICT because they have to develop new apps, new possibilities. Yeah? So also very interesting for grants. Physical products, of course, the smartphone, the hardware of the smartphone. As I told you, the cups. I have a client who developed these cups, but also the printing procedure, how and when and what kind of ink and whatnot. Very difficult. I have a client who makes coveralls for the military. So when military are on sea and they're in the boats to go to shore, if they have packages and backpacks, well, that must be protected. So they develop these kind of coveralls. Drains, of all things, the drain. Every morning we're looking at it. That's also a development. And it has to do with size. So the early drains were like this, with the floors with the cement getting thinner. So these kind of drains must also be thinner because else you had a big bump in your shower room. That's not the idea. Solariums, smartwatches, and roof boxes. These are all as examples for some clients where we apply for grants. And they're all being granted.
What about the health inventions?
Yeah, very. That's one of the European Union segments, health.
Okay.
Yeah, very important. Very important. Yeah. Now, durability, solar panels, LED, and everything that has to do with insulation of buildings. Look at this building. This is a reasonably old building. I don't know if this was a former stable of our queen, because it is also somewhere here in the surrounding. But these buildings are being redestinated. I told there's a new refurbished. Yeah, they get a new destination, and then you go from single glass to isolated glass, isolation in the roof, on the floor, in the walls. That's all being granted. You can apply for that.
So if you have an office and you invest in WBAZ your office,
Yeah.
that you can get a grant.
Yeah, if the office is your, if the office is your
Property.
property. Yeah. So the owner of the property who invests
Yeah.
can apply for grants.
Did you get the grant for 4 digits for the solar panels?
Yep.
What was the return that they got from their investment?
Oh, we had 10% of the investment.
10%.
Yeah, but they also isolated the roof. They did double glazing, so we had like 25,000 euros something at grants.
Yeah.
Yeah, on a total of 200,000 euros investment.
That was pretty
Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah. And this is the most fun. This is me in my car. And why do I show it? Because I have a very nice helmet when I'm skiing. Now, it's the other things could be for your could be far away, like big investments and development. I do nothing in development. I do nothing in investment and durability. What I do, I buy a 15-year-old car, which I think is a very nice car, and I put it on my business. Yeah, you know it, you can put your car on the business, so the business pays the tax and can get BTW back, and you can do the fuel, etc. on the company. This car, if it's not 15 years old, I have to pay on my income tax 600 per month, because there is a percentage over the how do you say it? Nieuwwaarde, purchase value. Heel goed, yeah, thank you. Yeah. So this car costs new 75,000 euros. 75,000 times 25%, which you have to pay tax over, it's 600. Because this car is 15 years, I pay 50 euros. And I can drive it everywhere I go, and I have the same advantages if it's a car which is younger than 50 years. So this is also in a way a grant, which you can use when you are a reasonably small company, and you don't do things like investments in. This is an investment for me in a car, but not in durability or in innovation. So I think this is a fun way of showing what grants also can do.
Is that the old time regeling or is it something else?
Yeah, it's called the young time regeling. No, it's still there.
Still there?
Yeah, still there. Yeah. So that's very nice. Okay.
So that's for any car that's reasonably old.
15. It must be exactly 15 years or older.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you have one like 14 years and 10 months, you pay 600. 2 months later, you pay 50.
Okay, but there you didn't have to apply, so, like.
No, this is a general tax rule because the car is 15 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the motorbike that you bought, you don't have to pay any extra tax for that?
Oh yeah, that's also. Ja, het gaat heel erg ver, maar if you drive a car of the company and you don't want to pay for it, then you cannot drive that car privately. You know that rule? Okay. And if you do that, you have to administrate all your company kilometers. So you cannot more than 500. If you buy a bike, a motorcycle, there is another rule that the tax government has to prove that I drive that motorcycle private. Well, that's not possible for them. Or they have to make photos or whatever. And then in that case, you don't have to pay anything over the motorcycle, but you have all the tax, grants, advantages. There are more advantages, but that's too difficult to tell now. Okay, that's more financial advantages. Okay, good. The end, revenues, very important. The WSO and the RDA grants are giving you a revenue of between 10 and 12 euros net per hour. That means that if you are working like 50% of your time on developing a product or a software program, 50% of your working time, well, people work like 1900 hours a year, 50 weeks times 45 weeks times 40 hours a week. So that's like the half, that's like 1,000 hours per year when you're working on development, you get like 1,000 times 10 is 10,000 euros. You don't get it back if you don't have to pay that amount to income tax. So normally you pay like 20,000 or 50,000 income tax. Now you have to pay 10,000 less. So that's money, that's liquidity, which stays in the company.
Is it only development and products, or is it also services?
Dat ligt eraan wat je op de service op staat.
Subscription on
Software as a service.
Software as a service.
subscription on getting the trash out of the house.
No, no, no. It must be development in a way that it's like a technical, complicated issue, which is being solved, being trying to get solved. So in the product, it's the way like the roof box I showed you, the material, the weight, the way it's locked, the way it's mounted on the roof. And in software, it's like the algorithms, etc., which has to be developed to get the final result. I have a company who has like 25 developers, so that's 25 times 50% of the time, so it's like 250,000 to 300,000 euros. They get back, they don't have to pay the tax. And that's around 5, 6 employees extra, which they can hire to do more business. And that's the stimulation behind the grants. To get more people at work, in work, get more people out of the chair into things to do development. Is that clear?
Only does that only apply to hours when you work on the development?
Yeah.
For example, I can imagine any person would spend 80% of the time work on the product and 20% doing some administration.
Yeah.
And with that 20%, their hours also gets compensation?
No, it's only the hours they're really working on the
Okay.
development issue.
So they have to register,
Yeah.
like, sort of time?
Yeah, there must be an administration.
Okay.
Good question. Yeah, I didn't mention it because it's too difficult, but there must be a proof of what you've been developing. Yeah, so there's hours and project administration, but there's also the help companies. Durability, that's like a net return of 10% of the investment. So if you buy for 10,000 euros solar panels, you can get a tax reduction on the corporation tax, which is net 10% of 10,000 euros. And if you do like my client Riva, the company who, the bus company, transportation company, they invest 500,000, so it's 50,000 euros, which they don't have to pay on corporation tax, lesser corporation tax. And as I told you, there's also a possibility to get cash. The first one is the most interesting one for your way of your companies. Decide what you're doing, and then you have to think over when you give an order to a developer. Yeah, the developer has to apply for grants, and then you can say, I want half of it. Yeah? And if you are a software developer and you do it for your own risk, or you do it in your own company, you are almost obligated to look for grants, because that's serious amount of money. Serious amount of money. No more questions? Do you have questions? No. No? Okay. Don't run away.
This is here, right?
No, I'm in the middle of Holland, near two, where the apples and the pears are being grown. Way back. No, it's in the center of Holland, like 50 kilometers. It's from Tiel, city called Tiel, near Tiel. That's a very small village.
And how do you contact you? Like when you like, will you be in Amsterdam to meet to discuss? Like,
I have clients all through Holland.
He has a bike and a car.
And a big car.
And he can expense all of the.
Tomorrow I have a project like a boss. I go with my motorbike. Motorcycle is nice.
You go to the website, you find contact.
Yeah.
Maybe I can tell you a bit about
But we are
what
right
my
here.
experience has been with
Yeah.
Rick.
Oh, yeah.
Because he can, of course, this is informative, but in the end, it's also part sales pitch. I don't have any interest in this company. So I've worked together with Ray. I think I met you like 3 years ago.
You tell the truth now. You tell the truth now.
I'm not going to tell the truth,
Okay.
yeah. And Rick was, Rick called us, and I don't know how you got in, I think through our accounting company, and he was trying to catch me for, I think, at least a year. And it was
12 months,
postponing it.
3 weeks, 2 days, 4 hours, and 10 minutes.
Exactly.
You never picked up the phone.
So the front office lady was trying to get in touch with me, and I was like, no, I'm not busy, I know it's the grants guy, and I had emails from you, and I knew that I needed to do it because it could get us some extra cash, and I postponed it. And in the end, I got into a talk with him, and then I think a few months later we had our first grant.
10 grand.
And yeah, we made a significant amount of money. It's not only that you don't want to find out on the website of the Dutch government yourself what grants are available, and I think if you try hard and you put some effort into it, you can find them. But the value in Rick is that he'll make sure that you have your proof in order, because that's the difficult thing. If you fuck up and you don't have an administration and you get a control from the government, and you don't have your administration in order, they're going to screw you. And he called me.
You must pay back with a fine. So.
Yeah, so what he does is he'll visit you and say, hey, can we have a chat? How are you doing? How's your administration? The next period is coming up. Do you have an administration? Okay, I'll check back with you next week. So he'll make sure that you don't get screwed by the government, or that you don't screw yourself. And that's where I found the real value, that I was absolutely sure that I was making these grants, and I was not getting into trouble because he would take care of covering up the explanation of work. And also reminding, hey, there's a new grants period coming up. If you want to make the money again next quarter, make sure to do it. So he was an excellent reminder machine. That's he knows.
We take care of your grants. So, yeah. I have a slogan, and it says, "We cannot make it better, but we can make it easier."
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was introduced by my dear friend Willem in a company which he was friendly with, and I came there, and an hour later we have estimated that they could get like 100,000 euros grants per year, and we're doing that for 3 years because they do a lot of software development, and we help them to take care of the applications and administration, and that's serious business. It's serious money for serious companies.
Do you also work per hour, or I think everybody wants to hire you, of course.
And I'm not very.
Oh, it's a paid service.
Yeah?
Oh.
Well, it's a combined fee. There's a first part of my fee is a dedicated fee, and that's based on that I have to do work to set things up. So I want a submitted, fast fee.
Fixed fee.
A fixed fee. Thank you very much. A fixed fee. It's depending if it's a company with 1 person, 10 person, or 100 or 300 persons, which you can understand. The second one, that's the most important one, is a no cure, no pay. So it's based on my effort and my result for the client, and that's a percentage of the grants my client gets. And if my client during the year changes his views, or he gets an order from a company that causes him that he cannot make many hours on development, although we applied for it and we got it, then I change my bill, my bill, because I think that when a company gets an opportunity and therefore he cannot make time for development, then I cannot charge him for things he doesn't do. And I think that's fair and transparent to be working with these companies, because ICT is also, it's some ad hoc, it's like we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or next week, so we must be flexible.
I think when we applied the first year, there was like, let's say a 10K grant or something. I paid Rick, I don't even remember,
Not
The
enough.
commission,
No, thank you.
but a commission based on that 10K, in the end, we didn't make the development hours that we estimated, because you always estimate high and then you end up a bit lower.
Yeah.
And then I just got a credit invoice without any penalty, so,
Yeah.
that's very
Yeah.
good.
That's part of the deal.
I didn't understand that.
Oh, we applied for 1,000 hours, and 1,000 hours is 10K, but due to internal other choices, they made not 1,000, but they made like 600 hours. So it was not 10K, but it was 6K. So I credit him for 4K minus times my fee, because I think that's doing honest business with each other. There was a
And kind of assessment appointment, like if I tell you the situation of the project and
Yeah.
you tell me like we can apply for this, we can do this, that,
Yeah.
that is like assessment before you actually start doing something.
Yeah.
That's why.
That visit is you charge or it's
It's not for free.
it's not it's
I
you
asked a
charge
cup of
for
coffee.
assessment.
I asked a cup of coffee.
No, seriously.
No, it's for free. Yeah. When I visit a company, I take about an hour, and what I want to know is what is the investment plan, and which time schedule we're doing that, what kind of investments, is it in the building, is it in development, and I make a calculation of what can be the revenues. So my clients always know what they can expect when I start with the business.
I think most important that you know entire landscape of what is going on. So by telling you the situation, you can see what is the best roadmap.
Yeah, exactly. And don't be fooled by me that I know every brand of the 2000.
You should.
No, because that's not possible. But as you know, my company name is called the Subsidie Informatie Group. So I have a network of specialists, who are all qualified and experienced in those 2000 brands.
So you can, if you say like I'm not really informed about this area, but I know somebody who can.
I know the headlines. I know the headlines, and if I see a possibility for a specific type of brand, I will invest it, and I will let you know what possibilities are. But in real time, it's like those 2, 3, 4 brands I mentioned are like 80% of the grants we apply for. There is, for instance, I'm not kidding, there was a grant that if you put down here a hake of special flowers, you would get a grant. I don't know if it exists still, but there are such strange grants, but they are also changing all the time. Yeah? And in that province it's possible, that province is not possible, or the amount of money is gone, it's given away, so there's no money more left, and that's very difficult. So.
Oh, by the way, it's different also by province, like if
for very special brands. Not those I mentioned.
Okay, since we are here and you are here right now, do you know well healthcare and technology?
Yeah.
Technology for
Yeah.
healthcare in Norway, right? So,
Yeah.
and does it depend on the area or it's the same?
Well, it starts in Brussels. You have like from the European Union, you have one of those KP7 areas is health. So everything that's being invested in health and to innovate health is like interesting. But there are always conditions that you have to how do you say it? Aanvoeren.
You should meet the requirement.
Thank you very much. And that's difficult because that's something I cannot influence. Yeah? So we have to look and what we can do with all our experience to write a project plan towards what they want to hear from the people who subsidize, give the grants. That's what we can do very good. Yeah? But it must be realistic.
I'm also curious, like, I guess there's a committee that are there to make the decision if they want to give you the grants or not.
1,800 people are looking
That's
over all the applications.
And you know all of them.
Yeah,
They're very boring people.
my question is, you know, when you apply for it, you just need to meet these requirements, then you will get it, or you have to compete with other applicants and what goes up, you know, once it's finished.
Sometimes you have to, sometimes you don't. So for the grants I told you, there's no competition. If you have a development who make the requirements of RVO, yeah, then it's done.
I applied for 8 different projects and all 8 got okay and got money.
Yeah. The other grant I told you about my client with the foldable cup, the paper you can fold to a cup. That's by they had an amount of money like 55 million euros for the whole of the Netherlands. So if you come, it's first in, and then you get applied or not, but it's depending on the quality of your project, of your application. So they look for quality in the application, and then you can be how do you say it, afgewezen.
Reject.
Yes, thank you. Then you can be rejected. Yeah. But with the WSO and the AEA and the EMEA, there's no possibility that you're being rejected. Besides that you're not doing things according to conditions. Yeah? So for a normal bolt in the light, you don't have to apply for a grant because that doesn't exist. Only for LED with a certain type of lumen, etc. etc. So you have to be careful.
You said that if you got a grant for developing a product and later you go sell the product, then you can also get a low tax credit.
Yeah, innovation box.
Does it count for the next 100 years or?
No. You make that agreement with the tax government for a period of 4 years, and after that you can apply again for a period of 4 years. And so it's not indefinite, but you can do a couple of times to make that period. Yeah.
Okay. If they still like you, then you get it again, or how does it work?
Well, it's depending on that the product has developed. Further on, so you start with a product like this, but in the end that product will be also be innovated. So for the next 4 years you do that innovation, you get the WSO, yeah, and that's one of the conditions to apply for the next period of 4 years of innovation.
So each 4 years you need to get 1 grant at least? Or?
Well, you get in those 4 years, you get over the revenue of the sales of the product you develop with WSO, you get a lower tax rate.
Yes.
But that product will be developing further on. Then in those years, you also get the innovation box.
Yeah.
You also apply for the WSO.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
that's again.
And that's the base. That's the base for the upcoming.
So actually, let's say it's actually a new product, or
well, it's a better product, or it's yeah.
We're in IT, we're going to do our exit within 4 years, right?
We're
in IT, we're going to do the exit within 4 years.
No problem. It's possible.
What's the Dutch word for innovation box? What is the innovation box?
What it is? Yeah. It's a.
What was the name of it? What was the
It's innovation box.
Innovatie.
Innovatie.
Is it a box in your text? Like
No, it's innovatie box.
It's not like box 1 of 2, misschien innovatie.
Nee, maar de box komt wel ergens vandaan uit de grillen van de Belastingdienst. Ja, maar het heet innovatiebox.
And do you also do afros?
Afros, ja. Ja, okay. Ja, no problem. But the more exclusive the grant is, the harder it is to get.
And the more you can get.
Exactly. So how higher the amount of the grant, the harder it is to get the application done. Because there is lesser money in total, and there are always more than one applications for the grant. So it's in the end it comes down to the quality of the application. But EFRO is
EFRO, it's a European better spending probably.
yeah, well, it's divided to
certain regions, launch innovation and CO2 reduction.
You have the BOM in the northern as a governmental organization who also take care of certain kind of grants. You have OP Zuid, you have OP Oost, it's too difficult to explain. That's why I have a right, that's why I have a living, by taking care of the specialists who know that kind of More questions?
I was thinking maybe we can just
Yeah,
disperse and
Yeah.
mingle a bit and
Okay.
like talk to each other. If you guys have more questions for Rick, you can just corner him.
Yeah. So don't shoot me, but and if there's a question tomorrow when you wake up and then oh, forgot it, go to my site and you can go to
So-
the question.
And I'm gonna